Hello everyone. In this lesson, we're going to see how one React component can use or leverage another React component. Let's jump right into the action. So in our previous lesson, we wrote a bit of JSX code, and our entire interface is defined or declared right here. At the moment, this still feels relatively organized because each one of our sections, right, the header, content, and footer, each section is only one line of code. But in the real world, our header might be hundreds or thousands of lines of code. With this in mind, one of the key concepts in React is breaking down your code into bite-sized or sort of single responsibility components. To show you what I mean, I want you to follow along with me right now. So let's use our imagination, and let's imagine that our heading was actually 500 lines of code instead of just this one heading level 1. Well, in that case, it would make sense that we'd want to store that code somewhere else and then just reference or point towards that code here. So here's how I would do that. Let's scroll down a bit. So maybe right below our app function, we can just drop down and let's create a brand new function. So type this in with me, function. We could name it anything we want, but let's name it our header. So that's capital O and then capital H, parentheses, curly brackets. Okay, and then within the body of this function, we can just return. And then if we wanted to have multiple lines of HTML, or I should say multiple lines of JSX, you would have parentheses and then you could drop down. But if you're only going to have a single element, right, or a single line of code, you don't need the parentheses. So we can just return a heading level 1 and inside it say our amazing app header. Okay, so this function represents a new separate component named our header. So then if we scroll back up to our main application component, well, check this out. We can remove this heading level 1 and instead in its place just say less than symbol our header / greater than symbol. Cool, we see that that is successfully rendered. It's no longer orange because I forgot to add that. So if you scroll down to our header on this H1, you could say class name equals special. Now, yes, our header is still only one line of code, but that's not the point. If our header was 100 lines of code, you could store that in this component, right? You could just wrap this in parentheses. And the idea is that our main component just references or points towards that component. So this is still our one centrally located or cohesive place to assemble or define or declare our interface, but pointing or leveraging other components within this component lets us stay super organized. Now, practice makes perfect, so let's practice turning our content area and our footer into components. Let's start with our time paragraph. So select that element and copy it into your clipboard. And then if we scroll down, we can create a new function. Say function. We could name it anything we want, but just so we're on the same page, let's call it time area, parentheses, curly brackets, and then we just return and then paste in your clipboard. And again, in the real world, you'd probably have more than one element or more than one line of code. In that case, you would just have parentheses, and then you could include as many lines of JSX as you want. But we just have one line, so return, paste. Okay, then back up in our app, instead of that actual paragraph here, we can just say time area / close out that tag. Cool, and let's do the same thing for our footer. So I would just copy this into my clipboard. Go and create a function. Let's name it footer and just have it return and paste in that text. Then up here, instead of actually including that, we can just say footer. Cool, so this way we're still declaring our interface in one central place, only now, even if each one of these sections took up hundreds or thousands of lines of code, well, our bird's eye view of the app is very clean and intuitive and easy to look at and make sense of. Now at this point, I want to transition into our next topic, which is making components flexible. So in React, a component is reusable, meaning you define what a component should be once, and then you can use it or render it as many times as you want. So for example, let's take our header. We could render not just one our header, but 2 or 3. So if I copied this and then just right below it, include it another 2 times, right? Then down in the preview area, we see 3 headers. Now in our particular example, it doesn't make sense to show the header more than once, but you can imagine that in a real world application with real content and real data, you would absolutely want to render certain components more than once, right? Like a list of user data or a list of blog posts or status updates. And this idea of reusing components like this brings us to the topic for our next lesson, which is properties or props. Props let us pass data into a component, which really lets the component come alive in terms of being flexible and reusable. Props are definitely one of the aha moments of learning React. So I'm really looking forward to this next lesson with you. Let's keep things rolling, and I'll see you then. To get immediate and lifetime access to the full 15-hour video course, you can find a heavily discounted coupon link in the description for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.